Welcome to Whispers INTHE Dark, where shadows have stories and every whisper could be a warning. If you're drawn to eerie mysteries, unsettling tales, and the kind of stories that stick with you long after the lights go out, you're in the right place. Every week, we bring you original horror stories and chilling narratives inspired by real legends, urban myths, and the darkest corners of the human imagination. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss what's lurking just around the corner. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones. Because tonight's story is not just a tale, it's a memory. A haunting one. We were just kids solving mysteries until one nearly killed us. Part 1. The Hollow Pines Detectives. They say childhood is when the world feels safest. That's a lie. The summer I turned 12, something opened in the forest behind our town, and we saw it, touched it. We thought we were solving a mystery. We didn't know we were digging up something meant to stay buried. It began like all forgotten horrors do, quietly. No scream, no warning, just the wind shifting one evening and the silence after dark stretching too long. I remember the air in Astoria turning thick, like the trees were holding their breath. That's when we noticed the light in the woods, flickering, rhythmic, like it was breathing. Max wanted to follow it. He always had this way of pushing forward, of laughing at the fear that lived in me like a second spine. "It's just someone camping," he said. But no one camped in Black Hollow. That part of the forest had been off limits for as long as anyone could remember. Every kid had heard the stories, about the boy who came back mute, about the eyes in the trees, about the thing that mimics your voice after dark. We should have listened, but we were the Hollow Pines Detectives. That was our summer identity, forged from late-night crime shows, flashlight adventures, and an old treehouse that creaked when the wind shifted. We had solved small-town cases for weeks. Lost cats, prank notes, missing Halloween decorations. The kind of mysteries that let kids feel like heroes. The kind that don't bite back. This time it did. It started with a dog, Mr. Whitaker's Pomeranian, Toby. He vanished one night without a trace. No barking, no dug-up fence, no clues. Mr. Whitaker looked hollow the next morning. We thought he was just an old man missing his pet. We didn't realize Toby was the warning shot. We made posters, knocked on doors, followed muddy prints that stopped abruptly at the edge of the hollow. Something about the way they ended, too clean, like the ground had swallowed the rest, sent a cold needle down my spine. Max wasn't afraid. He said if there was ever a case worth breaking the one rule for, it was this. We stood at the edge of the trees, just two kids with bikes and bravado. The forest looked darker than usual, like it was waiting for us. That was the first time I heard it whisper my name, not loud, not from behind me. It came from under the ground. I felt it in my teeth more than my ears. "Eli," it said, like a secret being unwrapped too slowly. Max didn't hear it, or he didn't say if he did. We went in. That's when everything started to rot. You think you know fear, you don't. Not until you hear your best friend's voice calling your name from the wrong direction. Not until you follow it and find no footprints. Not until the trees rearrange themselves when you're not looking, and you realize the sun's position hasn't changed for hours. We found symbols carved into bark, stone circles overgrown with moss, a rusted swing set where there shouldn't have been one, and in the center of a clearing, something that should not have existed, an altar, blackened and cracked, covered in old blood and fresh paw prints. We found a tuft of fur. Max told me not to say anything. He said we'd come back later. He said we'd tell the sheriff, but we never got that chance. Not after we found the journal, not after the thing started following us. I know you want to know how it ends. You want to know what happened to us, what we saw, what we survived, what we failed to stop. You will, But I promise you this. You'll wish you hadn't. Because what followed us back from that forest never really let go. But before I tell you everything, before the blood and the screams and the lies, we need to start where it all began. Back when the Hollow Pines detectives were just two boys chasing shadows. Back when monsters only lived on TV. Back when we still believed that every mystery had an answer. It didn't. It still doesn't. If you're new here, welcome to Whispers INTHE Dark, where we dig deep into the most chilling, unsettling stories ever told. And this one's personal. If you like true horror, mysteries with real teeth and tales that stay with you long after the lights go out, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this story a like. It keeps us going, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Now let's go back to that summer, to the bikes, the treehouse, the missing dog, and the thing that waited for us in Black Hollow. Part 2. The Disappearance of Toby. The first time I noticed something was off with Mr. Whittaker, it wasn't because of the missing dog. It was the way he stood on his porch that morning, staring blankly into the trees. Not calling out, not searching, just listening, as if something out there was whispering secrets only he could hear. Mr. Whittaker had always been something of a local relic. He was quiet, polite, lived alone. His only companion was Toby, a small orange Pomeranian who barked at everything and had a habit of slipping through the fence and running wild around the block. Everyone in town knew Toby. Everyone liked Toby. He had a way of diffusing tension with his ridiculous fur and constant yapping. But that morning the air felt strange. The sun was out, but it was weak, like light filtered through smoke. I found Max in the treehouse flipping through our case files. He glanced up at me, saw my expression, and put down the folder. "Toby's gone," I told him. "Mr. Whittaker said he never came home last night." Max stood. "Let's go." We started where we always did, the perimeter. Toby had several known escape points, and we checked each one. Behind the mailbox, the gap under the side gate, the broken lattice beneath the porch. Nothing. Then we saw them, paw prints. Leading down the sidewalk and into the grass, they disappeared into the woods behind the neighborhood, Black Hollow. I stared at the line of trees. Even in daylight, they looked wrong. Like they were waiting. Watching. "He wouldn't go in there," I muttered. Max crouched down and studied the prints. "These are fresh. Could be last night or early this morning. We're not supposed to go in the hollow. We won't, not really, just around the edge. We follow the trail. If it leads in too deep, we turn back." It wasn't a good plan, but it was the kind Max made sound reasonable. So we followed. The prints led us into the first few feet of the forest. The air changed the moment we stepped under the canopy. It grew cooler, heavier. Birds stopped chirping. Every crunch of twigs underfoot echoed like gunshots. Then they stopped. The paw prints, abruptly, like Toby had vanished into thin air. Max cursed softly. "Something's not right." I didn't respond. I was staring at the ground, not where the prints stopped, but what was beside them. Something had disturbed the earth, a series of long, dragging marks. Not claw marks, not human. Something else. We didn't follow them. Not that day. Instead, we backed out of the forest and went to talk to Mr. Whittaker. His house smelled like dust and old coffee. He was sitting at the table with a photo of Toby and a cup of untouched tea. His eyes were bloodshot, but his voice was steady. "He's not just lost," he said. "Something took him." Max and I exchanged a glance. "We saw paw prints," Max said. "They led into the forest." Mr. Whittaker looked at him then, and something in his face shifted. Fear, real fear, settled in his expression. "Don't go back in there," he said quietly. "Not for a dog, not for anything. We made posters anyway. We canvassed the neighborhood. We asked questions. Some people said they'd heard barking near the woods. Others claimed they saw something small and orange run past their house the night before. But the details were always fuzzy, always unclear. Then came the girl. She found us outside the general store, pinning up another copy of the missing poster. She looked our age, maybe younger, with tangled black hair and pale skin. I didn't recognize her. She said she lived near the water on the edge of town. "I saw your dog," she said. Her voice was flat like a statement of fact. "He was running into the trees. He looked scared." "You sure it was him?" Max asked. She nodded. "Something was chasing him." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean, something?" She shrugged. "It was tall, black, like it didn't belong here." We stared at her. "Do you know what it was?" Max finally asked. The girl tilted her head. "Do you believe in shadows that walk?" Then she turned and left. Just like that, we never saw her again. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the dragging marks in the dirt, about Mr. Whitaker's haunted face, about the girl and her question. "Do you believe in shadows that walk?" I didn't. Not yet, but I was about to. Part 3, The Path Through Black Hollow. We went back to the woods the next day. Max brought a flashlight even though it was barely past noon. I brought the amulet we'd found in Mr. Whitaker's shed, an old rusted pendant with strange markings we couldn't read. He said it had been in his family for generations. That morning he gave it to me without explanation, just pressed it into my hand, his own trembling. "You're going to need this." Max and I had barely spoken since the encounter with the girl. Her words hung in the air between us like a thick fog. Shadows that walk. We stepped past the edge of the trees, the world behind us dimming as if we'd crossed into another reality. The moment my foot hit the moss-covered earth, the sounds of the town vanished. No birds, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive silence that clung to us like wet cloth. The deeper we walked, the less the forest looked like something that belonged in Oregon. The trees leaned in strange directions, their trunks gnarled and split as if something had clawed its way out of them. Some had symbols carved deep into the bark, symbols that made my skin prickle with unease, triangles overlapping, spirals that turned the wrong way, lines that didn't end. We found the swing set after an hour, rusted chains, splintered wood, hanging crooked from a tree with no clearing around it, like the forest had grown around it to hide it away. Max pushed it gently. It didn't move, not an inch. "We should go back," I said. "We're close," he answered. "Do what?" He didn't answer. Eventually we reached a clearing, if you could call it that. It was circular, unnaturally so. The ground was bare, like nothing had grown there in years. At the center stood a flat stone slab, waist-high and stained a dark brown. Around it, tall wooden posts had been driven into the earth, their tops sharpened like stakes. Max stepped forward. I grabbed his arm. "We don't go near that." "Look," he said, pointing to the ground. A tuft of fur, orange, familiar. I felt my breath freeze in my chest. I knelt and picked it up. It was soft, warm, and fresh. I stared at Max, who looked pale under the gray sky now dimming above us. Something moved at the edge of the clearing. We both saw it, a figure tall and thin standing between two trees, not hiding, just watching. It didn't move. It didn't blink. We ran. Neither of us spoke. We just turned and sprinted, crashing through the undergrowth, branches slicing our skin. I didn't look back until I tripped and hit the ground. Max helped me up. He was bleeding from his temple. "Did you see it?" he asked, breathless. I nodded. It didn't follow us, at least not then. We emerged from the woods hours later, dirty and shaking. The sun had shifted, though we couldn't remember time passing. Everything felt wrong, tilted, like we'd stepped sideways into a version of the world where something was broken beneath the surface. At home that night, I didn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat on my bed staring at the amulet, feeling its metal warm against my palm. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want to hear that it was nothing. I didn't want to be told we imagined it, because I knew we hadn't. The next morning, Max wasn't at the treehouse. He wasn't answering his walkie. I biked to his house, heart pounding. His mom said he was still in bed, not feeling well. She wouldn't let me in. That night I dreamed of the figure in the woods. Except in the dream, it was in my room, standing at the foot of my bed, watching, breathing. When I woke up, the amulet was warm again, warmer than it had ever been. And outside, in the dirt beneath my window, were footprints, bare, long, too long, leading back toward the forest. Part 4, Secrets Beneath the Town. For a long time, I thought silence meant safety. That the stillness of our town, the unchanging routines, the friendly nods, the hushed mornings when nothing stirred, was a kind of protection. But after Black Hollow, after what Max and I saw in the clearing, I understood. Silence isn't safety. It's what lingers after something has passed through. It's what's left behind when people are too afraid to speak. Max had gone quiet, not just his voice but his whole being. He no longer laughed at my jokes, no longer rolled his eyes when I got too serious. He drifted in and out of conversations like someone living just beneath the surface of a dream. Sometimes he'd mutter words in a language I didn't know. Once I caught him scratching something into the wood of the treehouse, 3 triangles overlapping forming a star. At school, he was absent 3 days in a row. I asked his mother. She looked tired, older. She said he'd been sleepwalking, that he wouldn't eat, that he spoke in whispers while staring at his bedroom ceiling, and once she found him standing barefoot outside in the middle of the night, facing the woods. I didn't tell her about the footprints outside my own window, or the way the pendant Mr. Whittaker had given me would heat up whenever I stepped too close to the forest. Instead, I started looking for answers. I started asking questions. At the edge of Astoria's historic district sat the oldest building in town, the original town hall, now long abandoned. Most people thought of it as a relic, boarded up and left to decay. But my grandfather once told me that below it, under layers of brick and stone, there had once been a meeting place, used by the settlers before churches were built, before laws were written. That night I broke in. The front door was sealed, but the basement window had rotted through. I slipped inside and found myself standing in a narrow hallway lined with rusted filing cabinets. Most were empty. But behind a fallen bookcase, I discovered a trapdoor hidden beneath a moth-eaten rug. It led to a stone chamber beneath the foundation. The walls were covered in faded symbols, spirals, crosses, strange star-like patterns. It smelled of old earth and ash, and in the center on a raised slab was a journal. It looked ancient. Bound in cracked leather, its pages were heavy and yellowed. Written in it were stories, not just history but rituals. Accounts of townspeople vanishing, of lights in the woods, of voices calling to children. The words grew darker, more frantic, until finally the entries stopped. The last page read, "We sealed the mouth. We buried the watcher, but it stirs. It calls to the blood. When the lines are drawn again, it will rise." I felt the cold before I heard the whisper, a presence behind me, breathing with the rhythm of the earth itself. I turned, but no one was there. The next day, I tried to show Max the journal. He didn't come to the treehouse. I found him behind the church again, standing in front of the nameless grave. He was barefoot. His clothes were dirty and his eyes looked glassy, as though he hadn't slept in days. "He speaks to me," Max said. "Not in words, in dreams, in hunger." "Who?" I asked. Max turned to me, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. "You know who." That night I stayed awake with the journal open beside me. The amulet grew hotter the longer I held it, and when I finally fell asleep, I dreamt of Max, walking into the forest, calling my name in a voice that wasn't his. The next morning Max was gone. His mother was hysterical. She said he'd gone to bed and never woke up. His room was untouched, his shoes still by the door, but the window was open. I searched for hours, through the neighborhood, through the outskirts. And when the sun dipped below the tree line, I broke our rule. I went back into Black Hollow. I followed instinct, memory, fear. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of the same clearing, only now the altar was gone. In its place was a gaping hole in the earth, ringed with scorched soil. Around it, burned into the ground, were three overlapping triangles, and Max's jacket was lying at the edge, torn and stained with something dark. I almost turned back, almost ran for help, but then I heard it, a voice, low, wounded, illy. I stepped forward, and the hole breathed. From its depths came a sound I will never forget, not a growl, not a scream, but something in between, a deep, guttural croak, like bones grinding in a throat too old to remember speech. The ground vibrated beneath my feet. The trees swayed without wind, and then from the darkness I saw eyes, dozens, pale and glassy, opening one by one like candle flames in reverse. I stumbled back, fell, and that's when the figure appeared, not from the hole, from behind me. It was Miss Grant. She looked different, taller, her eyes black, her skin too smooth. She stepped between me and the pit like a mother shielding her child. "He's not yours anymore," she said, her voice two tones at once. "He was chosen." "What is this?" I choked. "What are you?" She looked at me with something like pity. "The town made a pact long ago. It kept us safe. We fed it lies. Now it wants truth. It wants blood." Max screamed from the hole, a scream of fear, pain, recognition, and the pendant at my chest glowed white-hot. Miss Grant flinched. Her skin cracked at the edges. I held the pendant forward and the light intensified. "You don't belong here," I whispered. She hissed, a sound not made by human lungs, and vanished in a gust of rot and ash. The forest fell silent, and the hole began to close. I leapt forward and grabbed the edge, calling Max's name, but there was no reply, only the sound of stone grinding against stone. By the time I pulled myself up, the ground was solid again, undisturbed, as if nothing had ever been there. I stumbled home in silence, blood on my hands and the journal clutched tight against my chest. And for the first time I understood, this wasn't a game. This wasn't a mystery to solve. It was a warning. And we were already too late. Part 5, Max is taken. I don't remember walking home. The forest let me leave, but it didn't let go. The sounds I heard in the hollow that night stayed with me long after the dirt was back over the pit. The ground had closed, but I could still feel it breathing. That sick rhythm, like something ancient had stirred and gone back to sleep, but only for a while. The pendant around my neck had cooled. It now felt like ordinary metal. But I kept it close, afraid to take it off. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not the sheriff, not my parents, not even Mr. Whittaker. The truth felt too impossible. And worse, I knew no one would believe me. Except for Max, but he was gone. The town fell quiet over the next few days, too quiet, like Astoria was waiting for something. Lights flickered more often. Dogs barked at nothing. And some nights I heard footsteps outside my window again, slow, deliberate. When I dared to look, there was never anyone there. But sometimes I could see the grass pushed down as if someone had been standing there for a long time. I started seeing shadows. Not just the usual ones, but tall, spindly figures that seemed to stretch in ways they shouldn't. They appeared in the corners of my vision, at school, in the store, even in my own home. Once I found a long, dark hair on my pillow. I don't have dark hair. The town began to fray. People whispered about sleepwalking, about missing time, about a woman in a long dress seen wandering the outskirts at dusk. It was Miss Grant, but she was supposed to be gone. After that night in the forest, I thought she had been destroyed or banished, but others saw her. Kids said she smiled at them through their bedroom windows. One boy said she told him to follow her into the woods. He tried. His parents found him a mile outside town, barefoot and whispering to trees. The line between dreams and waking began to blur. I kept having nightmares of Max, trapped beneath the earth, reaching up to me through the dirt while something pulled him down. In some dreams I dug, clawing through soil with my bare hands only to find the hole empty. In others I found him, but his eyes were wrong. One night I woke to a sound that wasn't a dream. It was a whisper, real, coming from the treehouse. I grabbed a flashlight and the pendant and made my way outside. The grass was damp. The air tasted like rust. As I climbed the ladder, I heard it again. Illy. It was Max's voice, but broken, slurred, like his throat didn't work right. I pushed open the hatch. The treehouse was empty, dusty, except for the far corner where our old case board stood. Someone had added a new note, scratched in red ink across the center, under the church. My heart raced. I climbed down and ran. The pendant bounced against my chest like a heartbeat. The church in Astoria was ancient, built on the first hill that faced the hollow. It had a crypt, supposedly sealed decades ago after a flood ruined the foundation. But I'd always suspected there was more to it. That night, I proved it. I broke in through a side window and made my way through the dark. The stained glass cast long fingers of colored moonlight across the pews. The silence was deafening. In the back, behind the altar, I found the old hatch, rusted, chained shut, but not locked, just twisted with wire. I pulled it free and lifted the trapdoor. The smell hit me first. Earth, decay, old, wet stone. I descended into the crypt, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The walls were lined with alcoves, some empty, some holding what looked like urns or boxes. But it was the floor that caught my attention. Symbols again, carved into the stone. The same overlapping triangles. I moved deeper. At the far end was a door I'd never known existed. Wood, iron-bound, ancient. It groaned as I pushed it open. Inside was a circular chamber. In its center was a pit, not natural, dug. Deliberate, and Max. He was standing at the edge, barefoot in the same clothes he'd worn when he vanished. His skin was pale. His eyes were closed. His arms were raised as if welcoming something. Max, I whispered. He didn't turn, didn't speak. I stepped closer. Max. This time he spoke, but it wasn't his voice. He is coming. The air turned cold. My breath came in clouds. I stepped closer. You don't have to do this, I said. You're stronger than him. You're still you. He smiled, but it wasn't Max's smile. You don't understand. I'm not resisting. I'm preparing. Then he opened his eyes, and they were black. The pendant around my neck pulsed. I grabbed it and light burst from it, casting shadows across the walls. Max screamed, a horrible, inhuman sound. The ground trembled, dust rained from the ceiling. I ran forward, grabbed his arm. The moment I touched him, I saw it. Visions, endless routes, a cavern beneath the town, a shape sleeping in stone, 1,000 eyes opening all at once. I screamed and yanked Max back. The light from the pendant flared again, burning his skin. He collapsed. I pulled him from the pit and dragged him out of the chamber, through the crypt, and out into the night. He didn't wake until morning. When he did, he cried. "I'm sorry," he said. "I couldn't stop it." He made promises. He showed me things. "We have to tell someone," I said. We did. We told Mr. Whittaker. We showed him the journal, the pendant, everything. He listened. Then he stood and said, "It's happening again, and we're already in too deep." That was when Max told us there was another altar. A second one. One meant not to summon but to seal, but it needed three. Three who had seen the hollow, three who carried the mark. And Max wasn't the only one. He lifted my sleeve. The same symbol was burned into my arm. And I hadn't even noticed. Part 6, The Return and Reckoning. The days that followed were not days at all. They were a blur of fear and firelight, of whispered plans and sleepless nights. Something had been set in motion. Max was back but changed. I was marked but didn't know when or how. And Mr. Whittaker, once just a quiet man with a yapping dog, had become something else entirely. A gatekeeper of old secrets and now our only guide. He told us the stories no one else dared. About the first settlers, the Black Hollow Pact, and the Watcher who lived beneath. They had built the town around a lie that they had conquered the woods, made them safe. But the truth was darker. They had made a deal. A living thing was buried beneath Astoria, ancient and starving. In return for protection, they gave it blood. That deal was broken when the last altar was destroyed. Now the Watcher was waking. But there was still one chance. One way to push it back. 3 marked souls. 3 vessels to bind it again. A second altar, hidden in the oldest part of the hollow, beneath the ruins of a chapel that hadn't existed on any map in over a century. And we had to find it. We left before sunrise. Max, still weak but determined. Mr. Whittaker, grim and armed with things I didn't recognize, old tools, symbols drawn in ash, a book with a spine made of bone. And me with the pendant around my neck warm again, a heartbeat against my skin. The forest welcomed us, not gently but with hunger. Trees bent above us like ribs of a great beast. The wind whispered names we didn't speak. The deeper we went, the more the rules of the world faded. Time lost its grip. Our watches stopped. The sun dimmed. We found ourselves walking in circles until Mr. Whittaker cut his palm and let blood drip to the roots. Only then did a path appear. It led to stone, half buried, cracked with age, the foundation of the forgotten chapel, and at its center the second altar, black and glistening as if it had been freshly unearthed. Max trembled. I held his hand. We stood in a triangle around the altar. Mr. Whittaker began the incantation. The wind rose, the trees groaned. The sky turned red. Then the ground split, not beneath the altar, but behind it, and from the rupture crawled something wrong. Not just a creature, a presence, limbs too many, eyes without lids, a mouth that smiled across its whole body. The Watcher. Max fell to his knees. I grabbed him. He was burning. The mark on his arm glowed. Mr. Whittaker screamed for us to hold the circle, to speak the words. I didn't know them, but something in me did. The mark pulsed. The pendant burned. I opened my mouth and the words came like a flood. The watcher shrieked. Its form distorted, flickering between realities. I saw it devour a world in seconds. I saw it weep beneath oceans of fire. I saw it stare through my eyes at something it feared. Us. We were the seal. The air exploded. Light and shadow clashed. Mr. Whittaker cried out one last command and vanished into flame. Max screamed my name. I reached for him as the altar lit up beneath us, carving symbols into the earth. I held his hand. I didn't let go. And then, silence, real silence. Not the hollow's silence, not the watcher's hush, but peace. We woke on the edge of the forest just before sunrise. The air smelled clean. The sky was clear, and Max, he was breathing. Normal. The mark on his arm was gone, so was mine. The watcher had been sealed, but at a cost. Mr. Whittaker was gone, the altar had vanished. And the woods, though still wild, felt empty. We walked home in silence, hand in hand. The town didn't remember. No one did. The library reopened. Miss Grant was never mentioned again. It was like none of it had happened, but we knew. We would always know. And we never went near Black Hollow again. Part 7. Years later, the haunting never left. It's been 20 years since that summer, and I still wake up with dirt under my nails. I wish I could say that what happened to us stayed in the woods. That the day we sealed the watcher beneath the altar was the end of it. That Max and I went back to being normal boys. That we laughed about it one day, told the story to friends over beers in college, exaggerated the horror until it became legend. But the truth is, nothing was ever the same. Not for Max, not for me, not for the town that refused to remember. I moved away from Astoria the day I turned 18, not in anger or rebellion, but necessity. Like if I didn't put distance between myself and the hollow, I'd wake up one morning walking toward it, barefoot, eyes closed, whispering the names of things I couldn't comprehend. I landed in Portland, a city large enough to vanish into. I worked small jobs, took up photography. Something about capturing shadows made them feel less powerful. I kept the pendant in a box for years. Locked, hidden, but I could always feel it. Some nights it would hum softly like a tuning fork in my bones. Max disappeared for a while after high school. Last I heard, he was in Wyoming, teaching somewhere rural. He never settled, never married. I think he was afraid of bringing anything close to what we'd been through into someone else's life. We emailed sometimes, short messages. Hey, you good? Any news? But he never talked about the hollow. I think he was scared that saying the name would open a door that never closed. The last time we saw each other was 5 years ago. We met at a roadside diner halfway between Portland and Boise. He looked older, not aged, worn, like a painting that had been hung too long in the sun. He said he hadn't dreamed in 6 months. That was the longest he'd gone. I told him I hadn't dreamed either, but I lied. I dream all the time. In the dreams, the forest grows through my walls. The roots break through the foundation of wherever I'm living. I'll be brushing my teeth or doing dishes, and the lights will flicker, and in the mirror behind me, I'll see the woods creeping in. And sometimes I see someone standing just outside my window, tall, still, not Max, not anyone I've ever known. Sometimes I hear my name, not whispered, not spoken, said. There's a weight to it. like the voice is being pushed through layers of soil and blood to reach me. Eli. I kept journals, dozens of them. At first they were about the case, about Toby and the missing dog posters and Mr. Whittaker, about the triangle symbols and the journal from the library. Then they became about the dreams, about the sim. I saw it on a subway wall once, drawn in charcoal, overlapping triangles. I took a picture. By the time I turned back, it was gone. I tried to forget. I dated someone once, a good woman, kind, pa. We broke up 6 months later. I couldn't sleep without waking up screaming her name. She said she'd never seen someone look at shadows the way I did. The truth is, I still see the watcher, not clearly, not in mirrors or windows or dreams, but in things, in patterns, in the way people stand too still, in the way some doors close too quietly. It's there, underneath, always, and I think it's coming back, not all at once, not like before, but slow, patient. I started seeing the signs again 3 months ago. A news article about a boy found sleepwalking in Coos Bay. A librarian missing in Salem. Last seen muttering about roots in the basement. A picture on social media. 3 triangles scratched into the side of a school desk. At first I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was just coincidence, that I was reading too much into it. But then the pendant warmed again. For the first time in 2 decades, I called Max. No answer. I emailed nothing. I drove to his last known address. The cabin was empty, door unlocked, his things untouched, but on the kitchen table. I don't know where he went, but I think he's gone back. Back to Astoria, back to the Hollow. I returned 2 days ago. I parked at the edge of town and walked. Past the store, the lie. I stood. I thought. I didn't. Instead, I sat and wrote this. Not for myself, for why? Because if you're reading this, then the watcher has already started reaching out again. It do. So if you see the symbol, car, you're being marked, and don't answer, don't turn, Don. Because the hollow never forgets, and now neither can you. Reflection and final thoughts. The hollow that lives in us. Looking back now, it's difficult to separate the story from the person I became. What began as an innocent summer of childhood mystery, a missing dog, a homemade detective agency, and 2 boys with walkie-talkies, slowly transformed into something much darker, deeper, and permanent. In the heart of Astoria, behind the illusion of safety and routine, something ancient had waited. And somehow, Max and I became its witnesses, its challengers, its survivors. Our journey wasn't about ghosts or monsters in the traditional sense. It wasn't about jump scares or blood on the walls. It was about the unknown, the things we bury beneath the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe. It was about what happens when the veil is pulled back and you realize the world is far more fragile than you thought. As children, we believed in mystery because mystery was fun. It made us feel powerful. Solving the case of the missing cat or uncovering who stole Mrs. Crenshaw's cookies gave us purpose. We played at being heroes because we were young enough to believe the world would always play fair. But Black Hollow didn't play fair. The Watcher didn't play at all. It used silence as a weapon, time as a cage. It twisted reality into a maze where logic and childhood innocence couldn't follow. It used our fears against us and made us question everything, even each other. Max was always braver than me, more curious, but that curiosity came at a cost. The day he vanished, something inside me broke. I didn't just lose my best friend, I lost the illusion that we were ever in control. When I found him again, hollow-eyed and whispering in languages older than history, I realized that surviving doesn't always mean saving. Sometimes, it just means holding on to what little light you can find. We were lucky. We sealed it away for now, but it never really left. Not completely. We carry it in dreams, in symbols, in the way we flinch at certain shadows or feel uneasy in places that should feel familiar. Trauma doesn't just scar, it stains. And even if others forget, your soul remembers. Years passed. We grew older. The world moved on. And yet not a week goes by where I don't hear the hollow in some way, in the hush before a storm, in the way tree branches scrape against my window, in the breath between heartbeats when the room goes still. Max once said that the hollow chooses people, that it sees something in them, an openness, a crack. Maybe it chose us because we looked too closely. Maybe because we dared to ask the wrong questions, or maybe because it knew we wouldn't run. Not at first. The strange part is that I don't regret any of it. Because that summer, as terrifying as it became, was also the last time I ever felt truly alive in that innocent, unguarded way. Before the world showed its teeth. Before the rules changed. Now I live in a world with two layers. The one everyone else sees, coffee shops, office buildings, podcasts, holidays. And the one I see, the layer just underneath, where reality buckles in places and things that shouldn't exist sometimes do. I've learned to live with it, to coexist with the hollow inside me. I no longer try to erase it, I accept it. Because pretending it wasn't real would be the biggest lie of all. The lesson within the horror. If this story leaves you with anything, let it be this. What you choose not to see still exists. The shadows we ignore, the truths we bury, the traumas we silence, they don't vanish. They fester. And sometimes they grow powerful enough to demand our attention, whether we're ready or not. You don't need to stumble upon an ancient horror in the woods to know fear. Life gives us plenty of it: grief, betrayal, loneliness, failure. But like Max and I learned, facing it matters. Looking directly at the thing that terrifies you, even when your hands shake and your voice falters, is the only way to survive with your soul intact. We also learned the value of connection, that even in the face of something vast and unknowable, holding someone's hand can anchor you to the world. Love and loyalty are not weaknesses. They are protections. They are the light we bring with us into the dark. In your life, you may never be marked by a symbol. You may never find an altar in the woods or speak words you don't understand. But you will face darkness, in yourself, in others, in the world. And when that time comes, remember, you are not alone. There is always a choice, to look away or to look deeper, to retreat or to resist, to forget or to remember. This story was about a haunting, yes, but not just the kind with monsters. It was about what it means to be human in the aftermath of fear, how we make meaning out of what hurts us, how we carry our scars, and how, sometimes, the greatest bravery isn't in banishing the darkness, but in learning to walk alongside it without letting it define us. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Have you ever faced a moment in life where something hidden became suddenly undeniable? A truth, a fear, a pattern, a silence too loud to ignore. Do you believe some places carry weight, memories, energies, things that linger long after we've moved on? Have you ever dreamed of something you couldn't explain and wondered if maybe it was more than a dream? I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, your theories, your own stories. Let's talk about the shadows and how we've learned to live with them. Let's build a space where curiosity doesn't come at the cost of fear. And if you found this story compelling, if it stirred something in you, made you remember, made you feel, then please take a second to subscribe to Whispers INTHE Dark. It helps this channel grow. It keeps the stories coming. And most importantly, it reminds us both that the things we whisper into the night aren't forgotten. The hollow is watching, but so are we, and together we remember.